Okay, now we go into part two. I'm sorry to end it so abruptly. I was literally just going to finish that paragraph and go into it, and it killed over on me. That's okay, but if you are looking at part two and haven't seen part one, if you go to the very end of this in the last few seconds, in the top right hand corner, it's going to go back to part one. Top left hand corner, it'll go on to part three. So, where I was, Typhon attempts to destroy Zeus at the will of Gaia because Zeus is imprisoned in the Titans. Typhon overcomes Zeus in their first battle, tears out his sinews, and so on. However, Hermes helps bring it back. And we talked about Arima and the Ari and how this works together too, but then strangely, the Arima is something different. Arima is the couch of Typhus, as Homer expresses it. It's a hard place to cite in Greek mythology, said to be where Zeus defeated Typhon and where Echidna dwells. In the Iliad, following the catalogue of ships, Homer returns to describe the tramp of the huge Achaean army. It is like the resounding earth beneath the anger of Zeus, who delights in thunder whenever he lashes the ground around Typhus, or Arima, or Eremos, where they say is Typhus's bed, so his resting place, right? Even the ancients were uncertain, Robin Lane Fox observes in the preface to an offering and identification of Arima. Some readers have assumed that an unattestable people, the Aramoi, were intended to be talked about there, but it's not. It's a place and it's a concept, and it's not right there around the corner from that big tree. It's a concept, and it's volcanoes move quite a bit too. In fact, if you look deep into it, he wasn't always at Mount Etna, and its location changes too. And if you really look into it, Olympus actually changed two locations, but that's neither here nor there. Homer's interjection, they say, seems to place Arima at a certain remove from his experience and those of his hearers. It's clear that the ancient critics did not know which region this signified, comments G.S. Kirk concerning the passage. Hesiod remarks that Arima is where Echidna, the chthonic mate of Typhon, dwells, there in earth's secret places, for there she has her cave on the underside of a hollow rock, far from the immortal gods and far from all mortals. There our gods ordained her a fabulous home to live in, which she keeps underground among the Aramoi. Grisly Echidna, a fragment from the lost poem of Pindar, notes that the highly celebrated Carycian cave once, among the Aramoi, Zeus had battered Typhus with 50 heads. At this time he had 50, not 100, and so on. But also this connects now to the abyss god and how he's got this special underworld place, much like Hades does or someplace else, in this forming thing. So as you can tell now, this isn't some place that you can just be shown. But a lot of times the entrances where there is lava are a volcano, and then that signifies it. Hopefully that makes it more understood. Strabo gives a brief list of places where Arima had been cited by previous writers: Lydia, Syria, Cilicia, and even Sicily and the West. Fox notes that in the North Syria, where early Greek trading post of Almina, very close to that, lay the presence from the 9th century onwards, the presence of Arameans speaking and writing in Aramaic, and even earlier royal Assyrian text of 10,060 BC refers to a land of Arami, and Arami or Arami, eastwards in Mesopotamia. So now we're connecting to there again. Its people reoccur in the text of Sargon, circa 710 BC, again at Arami. The truth is often more subtle than a simple identification of such a distant hint, as Fox demonstrates, linking myth, surviving inscriptions, and other documentation to identify Arima with a territory surrounding the Carycian cave. An identification was first made by Alexander's historical advisor Callisthenes. The Aramoi are located by the Carycian cave near Cadmus, and the promontory of Sarpedon, serpents, the neighboring mountains are called Arima. So he's designating it in this one area. But there's more weirdness to this. Fox confirms Calithes with an inscription in the temple built at the cave's entrance that records a visitor's propitiation of Pan and Hermes. At this broad recess in the earth at Arima, Hermes and Goat Pan, Aegapan, much like Egypt, but almost like Japan, Japan, rescued Zeus, deprived of his sinews from his first defeat of his hands of Typhon. Fox notes that in inscriptions found at the nearby settlement of Corycos, Zeus is specifically entitled the Zeus of Victory, referring to his victory over Typhus. Therefore, in the war with Typhon, he also notes in passing the earlier Hittite place named Irima in Cilicia, and Irima and Arima actually had more of a connection than people ever wanted to give credit for way back there. But the connection to Japan and the idea of that and Egypt and all these things with these names is another strange thing, where it shows you that almost in the search for the Holy Grail, they give up some information that was never known. In the Corinthian cave, now Sinet V. Kenim, or English of heaven and hell, right? The names of the two big sinkholes on the Tartarus Mountains in the Mersin province of Turkey is 20 stadia inland. Says Strabo, the best crocus or saffron grows there. And so he's talking about this and where this happens in Turkey. Now, the Taurus Mountains are a mountain complex in southern Turkey, dividing the Mediterranean coastal region of southern Turkey from the central Anatolian plateau. The system extends along a curve from Lake Igidir in the west to the upper reaches of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers in the east, and is a part of the Alpide belt in Eurasia. In the Alagadar and Bolkar mountains, I'm destroying these names, limestone has eroded to form karstic landscapes of waterfalls, underground rivers, and some of the largest caves in all of Asia. The Mangavat River originates on the southern slopes of the Belgari Range, and I've got a story about that exact named right there, that Mangavat, and an ancient find of Proto-Indo-Europeans, and even a thing that they say is not just Kurgan burial mounds, but a pyramid. Then people said it was a pyramid. They went out there and they go, no, it's not an Egyptian pyramid. This is like a mastaba or like a Sumerian ziggurat. And everybody went, oh, and walked off of it. And it's like, no, look, cool. It's anyhow, people. The bull was the common symbol and depiction of ancient Near Eastern storm gods. They worked together, hence Taurus the bull, etc., and hence the name of the mountains that they have right there too. And it also goes to do with cattle and bulls, and Katol Hoyak, and this concept. You can even see something weird. What's the name for cattle or bulls in Egypt? And it's cow, K-A-W, but cow. Let's continue. The mountains there are a place of many ancient storm god temples. Torrential thunderstorms in these mountains were deemed by the ancient Syrians to be the work of the storm god Adad, to make the Tigris and Euphrates rivers rise and flood and nearby fertilize the land, there and on down through the Sumerian lands. The Hurrians, Armenians, probably originators of the various storm gods of the ancient Near East, were a people who modern scholars place in the Taurus Mountains at their probable earliest origins, and then migrating into the area there and settling more. A Bronze Age archaeological site where early evidence of tin mining was found is at Kestel. The pass, known in antiquity as the Sicilian Gates, crosses the range north of Tarsus. And this is like the path through the Alps and things like that. This is a sacred place of leading through there. And then this mine that was there in ancient times. Strabo describes this cave as a great hollow of circular form, surrounding by a margin of rock on all sides of a considerable height. On descending into this cavity, the ground is found to be uneven and generally rocky and is filled with shrubs, both evergreen and cultivated, with some parts of saffron is cultivated. There is also a cave here which contains a large source which pours forth a river of pure pellucid water, but it is immediately sinking into the earth after and flowing underground and enters into the sea. This is like your Devil's Punch Bowl, where they see water coming out of a cave and going back into the water, and it's into a sinkhole, and there's no river past that. Where the hell is it? And it comes out much later. I've thought about doing a video about one of those. You know, they take and throw dye in it and try to see where it comes out, and it's amazing what they found in the one that Devil's Punch Bowl one was. So they call it bitter water because that has to do with sea too. And Pomponius Mela has a long description of the same place, apparently from the same authority that Strabo followed, but more embellished upon. This place is probably on the top of the mountain above Corycus. This place is famed in Greek mythology is the Sicilian cave of Pindar and of Aeschylus, and as Arima, couch of Typhus, and it is the lair of Zeus' fiercest component, the giant Typhon or Typhus. But it is not hooked up to a people, it's hooked up to a spot, and it's not really connective of a people. Indriya Saka, or Sakra, is the leader of the Devas, or gods, and the lord of Svargolaka, or heaven in the Hindu religion. When you say a name like Svargolaka, you almost think of something that's definitely more Sarsgaard, but no, and that shows Proto-Indo-European linguistic connections too. He is the god of rain and thunderstorms. He wields a lightning thunderbolt known as Vaira, and rides on a white elephant known as Airavata, or an Aryan conveyance. Indriya is one of the chief deities and is the twin brother of Agni, said to be born of Dias Pitar, heavenly father, again Dias Pitar, Zeus, Jupiter, and Pravi Mala, Mother Earth. And so whenever I was talking before a lot about these Jupiter and Saturn and how they connect to all these things, and people were probably saying, oh, no, look at the connections that are here. He is also mentioned as Aditya, son of Aditi. His home is situated on Mount Meru in heaven. He has many epithets, notably Versan, the bull, and Varatan, the slaver of Vertra. Meghanavana is the one who rides the clouds, and Devapati, or Devapati, or the father Deva, the lord of the gods, or Devas. In early Vedic religion, Vritra, the enveloper, as an Asura. Notice that word. Ashura. Also a serpent or a dragon, the personification of drought, and an enemy of Indra. Vritra is also known in the Vedas as Ahi, snake, and he appears as a dragon that blocks the course of the rivers and is heroically slain by Indra. We talked about how in the ancient findings that a lot of these Aryan settlements that were in North India, that the rivers changed courses and they had to move. In fact, that famous one that I showed in that video where they talk about Soma and the drink that they have that is ephedra, cannabis, and opium, and the horse burials and everything that got blocked. Why? Because it says India has to do with these things, and they still deny it to this day, but it's it's really undeniable. The genetics and everything has shown it and stuff. But and it didn't even happen just once, but twice. And then there was a British too. And they're great people, and it's not taking away from them in any way to say that these Aryans had helped them out. What we're finding out slowly but surely is that these Aryans helped them out, a lot of the Orient out, a lot of the people in North Africa out, and pretty much set forth humanity in a lot of these different people. And one that way that we can show that it reflect in these people is by their ancient stories and how closely connected of a web that they actually are. And that's what I've been trying to talk about for years now. And this is just one aspect of showing you that here is that damn spider web. Aspects of Indra as a deity are cognate to other Indo-European gods. They are either thunder gods such as Thor, or Perun, and Zeus, or gods of intoxication drinks like the Soma drink, such as Dionysus, and the wine and everything. The name of Indra, Indara, is also mentioned among the gods of the Mitanni. And the Mitanni are up there in the Hurrian area in Hattusha and stuff. We've talked about them. And their art shows that same red ochre males and pale females and stuff. A Hurrian-speaking people who ruled northern Syria from about 1500 BC to 1300 BC. Very famous for a point in time. In Celtic mythology, Tyrannus was the god of thunder, worshipped essentially in Gaul, the British Isles, but also in the Rhineland and Danube areas and regions, amongst others. Tyrannus, along with Isis and Tautalis, was part of a sacred triad. It was mentioned by the Roman poet Lucian in his epic poem Paracelsia as a Celtic deity to whom human sacrifices offerings were made. Tyrannus was associated with a Cyclops Brontes, or Brontes, thunder in Greek mythology, and Bront and has a lot to do with more. I've talked about that in another video, and I'll go 30 minutes if I start. But it also hooks up with Cyclops, the Brontes in Greek mythology, and with the wheel itself. And so this wheel that's coming into there too brings this story, or you can pinpoint the fact that it comes in with it because now they've got the wheel, and there's this god with this story about this wheel thing, and these wheeled chariots, and these sun gods that are on these wheeled chariots, quite often all pulled by horses. And where did horses come from? Right. Some people have trouble making connections. Other ones make some of them. Finally, some people make other connections. I indeed have made a few connections that are found to be untrue later. But those were connections off what other people have made too, off ideas of seeing pottery in certain places. Well, just because they have the pottery doesn't mean they were the same exact people. But it also doesn't mean that all of a sudden that they were different, that they were, oh, well, these must be Orientals then or something. No, there's just slightly different culture. They're hooked up together. They sold them some pots. What'd they sell it for? I don't know. They don't have a record of that. So there's this other god of thunder and the same thing. And you talk about Tyrannus and his name, and tyrannical, and the king of Tyre, and tyranny, and all this concept that goes with this idea, and thunder, and boy, people were scared of thunder and lightning and stuff, and a lot of people still are to these days. But many representations of a bearded god with a thunderbolt in one hand and a wheel in the other have been recovered from Gaul, where this deity apparently came to be synchronized with Jupiter himself. And are they trying to say it's two separate gods and it was synchronized? Or are they trying to let you know that this story ran across everywhere, and though it became slightly different, at this one place right here you can see where these people put it together and called it the same thing, therefore kind of showing you that, yeah, that's got the same thing. Why the Greeks and Romans were so eager to put their gods together is because they were the same people. just under different names. The name as recorded by Lucian is unattested epigraphically, but variants of the name include the forms Teneris, Teranaku, Taranao, Terrano, like terrain, like Mediterranean. The name is continued in the Irish too, as Tyrian, and is likely connected with those of Germanic, like Norse Thor or Tor, Anglo-Saxon Punor, and German Donar, and the Sami or Horagales, gods of thunder. And we say Horagales, and we talk about Horus and Gal and stuff as being a great man, Lugal, and these type of situations that go across linguistics. And so the great god of thunder, and Horus is epidemic of a bird or falcons and things, and I think we'll talk about that shortly. Again, if this goes to a part 3, it's going to be up in your top left-hand corner. I'll try to end this when I want to as opposed to the machine, but quite often when I get close, it decides for me. If it does so, it will be in your upper top left-hand corner going to part 3. And I appreciate you sticking with me. Hopefully I'm making it interesting enough, and the topic is interesting enough itself, for they're just starting to make all these different connections here. Tyrannus is likely associated with a Gallic ambisagaras, likely from Proto-Celtic ambisagros, or about strength. Now we have the Sagros Mountains, and we have ambi, like ambidextrous. And so, though it's said to be about strength, it could be about willing strength, or ability to use so strength, that he has strength, if you will. In the interpretation of Romana with Jupiter, the reconstructed Proto-Celtic form of the name is Tyrannos, or thunder. In present-day Welsh, Tyranu and Terran means to thunder, or thunderer, and Tyrannin and Terran in Britain. And people wonder where the name, perhaps way over in Iran, it's Tehran, works with too, and it's the city of lightning, just like Baalbek is a concept of it too, and it shows you another connection and a similarness. And hey, you know, there's York and there's New York, and but that was all in a different time when there were different people in different places, right? In present-day Irish, Turan means thunder. This may also be connected to the ancient Greek Oranos, meaning sky. This is also where we get the idea of Uranus, and him being the sky god, and the Titans before them, and the layer of gods that happens too under the sky god. But sky and cosmos and everything above is considered to be one thing, and together at that time. It also can be connected with Tyranno or Tyrannos, meaning of the sky or from the sky. And a lot of people have used that to say, so there is aliens because they came from the sky. And we could go way down that road. And I'll do a video. I've always thought about doing a video where I really lead people all the way through it on this thing and then go, nah, at the end or something. I think it would kind of piss people off. But I have made a couple that connect to UFO ideas and say, hey, look at this. Here's something to question. Even a UFO, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, well, this is what they're going the information off of. Just look at that. And this is where they get that idea from. And some of it I can totally debunk, and other ones you can't. The strange thing about the Sumerians and their gods and everything, they say they came from heaven and all these things, and now they've died and gone to heaven. Is that just because they're dead and they're in heaven now too, like grandma? Or do these people actually come from there? And because it seems to be the essence of this idea that gods are in heaven and everything, and people go there, that it seems to pinpoint that, we had some god from heaven come down, and that sounds like an alien, because regardless of, I've even told my brother who's a deacon in a church about this and could not help but to agree. God is an alien to this world. God is an alien. No matter why you want to look at it, if he created the earth and everything, then therefore he's not from here, so he's an alien to this world. So God is an alien, or at least what we think of as God today would be an alien too, right? So all of these names seem to hook together. Tyrannus, a perfect personification of thunders, often identified with similar deities found in other Indo-European pantheons. And so here's a connection. It seems like every one of these pantheons has this. And of course, a lot of people have discounted this and said, well, hell, everybody sees thunder and lightning, so they all made a god about it. And it's like, no, you're not paying attention. The whole pantheon works in this way, and this one guy does this thing, and it has certain aspects to it, and he does this thing, and he holds this lightning, and it all looks the same and everything. I mean, come on, it gets to a certain point here where you have to say, well, they heard each other's stories. No. Come on, try again. Try again. They all come from a common root. How about that? And then over time, have split and changed a little different? Yep. Of these other Indo-European pantheons, Old North is Tor, Anglo-Saxon is Tunor, Punor, Old High German is Donar, from the Proto-Germanic Punraz or Punaz, and their Hittite theonym Tarhun, or see Teshub, contains a comparable Tauran element inside of them. The Thracians, their deity names Zebel Thurdos. So now we have Bel and Baal and Thor in together. Zebel Thuridos also contains this element. Thracian third, means to push or crash down. Believe it or not, it's said in linguistics, that's where we get the idea of turd today, dropping the H sound off of it, that a turd is to push and crash down, to drop the kids off at the pool whenever you're on the toilet. The name of the Sami thunder god and god Horogales derives from Thor's. Let that sink in just for a second. Votive wheels called roulettes, so roulette wheels, right? Thought to correspond with the cult of Tyrannus. Thousands of such wheels have been found in sanctuaries in Belgic Gaul dating from 50 BC to 50 AD, actually from a little before that and a few ones, but most of them are around this one era, strangely. The wheel, more specifically the chariot wheel with 6 or 8 spokes, usually 8, was an important symbol in historical Celtic polytheism, apparently associated with a specific god known as the wheel god, identified as the sky or sun or thunder god, whose name attested as Tyrannus by Lucan. And here we have that wheel in the sky that keeps on turning. Does anybody remember the Journey song, Wheel in the Sky Keeps on Turning? Whenever I was a kid and I was into D&D and stuff, this was the song playing on the radio in the background as I was reading about this type of stuff. It was wicked how it kept going together. Then I grabbed the Journey album cover and it had the scarab thing onto it. Then I studied Mesopotamia and Persia, and they all had the same exact symbology, and then Mithras and everything, and I'm making all these connections, and other people and the people I'm reading that are so, into it are not making these connections. And I'm just looking right at it straightforward, and it's weird, and I've always thought, hey, all these ancient rock and roll people look at these album covers and some of their songs and all this, D&D type of black metal that came out and all that type of stuff, but maybe it was just me reading into it. No, it does seem like they're talking about a lot of these exact same things. In fact, that Saffron Crocus, there's a band called Crocus. Everybody remember that band? But let's just continue. Numerous Celtic coins also depict such a wheel, and that sacred wheel. It is thought to correspond to a sun cult practiced by Bronze Age Europe, and in fact all Proto-Indo-Europeans have that sun god. And I've talked about the sun wheel and sun temples on the ground and how they found them all the way up in the edge of China, all the way down through, and it looks like these sun wheel symbols is the same thing that hooks up to an idea like Stonehenge and all these other sacred circles and stuff that go on with astrology and everything too. And it even goes back into the time of Göbekli Tepe and stuff, where they've got that same kind of concept going on, right? And it's built like a wheel, but it doesn't necessarily talk. It's not necessarily a cart at this point, but the wheel represents the sun, and half wheel is shown in the Gundestrup or broken wheel panel. Also had 8 visible spokes, and you see this 8 visible spokes wheels in all the ancient stories of the Vedas and everything. And I've shown pictures of where in India they have this 8-wheeled giant sun spoke situation going on with Indra and the Vedas and all this stuff. And it shows you it's a connection that people quite often don't want to make, but I'm all over it. Symbolic votive wheels were offered at shrines such as in Alesia. Rivers cast into rivers such as the Seine River, buried in tombs, are worn as amulets since the middle of Bronze Age, and people wonder what that watch-looking symbology is on the Sumerians that look like they've got a band around it and a watch, but it's a symbol that looks quite a bit like the symbol of the sun that they have quite a bit often atop on those different cylinder seal impressions, and the one that has that 8-spoke situation, which is really nothing more than a circle with a cross in it, which looks like X is here, right? And we've talked about that. Well, it's got an X in it also. It has the cross of a plus sign and then an X in it. This makes 8. It's a full structure. It can be drawn to 12, but it didn't for purpose. These such wheel pendants from the Bronze Age usually had 4 spokes and are commonly identified as solar symbols or a sun cross, as I just spoke about with that cross inside of it. Artifacts parallel to the Celtic votive wheels or wheel pendants are so-called Zerachhyben in Germanic text. The identification of the sun with a wheel or a chariot has parallels in Germanic, Greek, and Vedic mythology of the sun chariot. And I think everybody understands this. They from the story of Icarus and all these things about this chariot that takes the sun across the sky during the day. It's a fiery chariot carried by horses and a chariot and wheels, right? And there's these people that had the chariot and the wheels. One way we can easily see this is coming into Egypt. They did not have horses or the chariot in its form, compound bow, and other things brought to them by the Hyksos. And the Hyksos are seen to have come up from Proto-Indo-European lands. Everybody tries to say, well, it's just the Canaanites. They just scooted over. No. That's why there's so much of a nomenclature of difference given to them. While they may have had groupings with them, what brought it there was something that was different than that was there. Simply as seen as that. And it brought something to the land that never was. I.e., Jesus and everybody before then goes in on donkeys and so, blah, blah, blah. But we can see a donkey cart right at this point turning into a chariot. It carries the sun across. And you see that horse symbology in ancient Proto-Indo-Europeans where they've got that sun disk pulled behind these horses. It's kind of famous, kind of eat up and bad looking. But it's got those weird little circles all over it. That looks just like that hat, that looks like a witch's hat that had all the symbology on it that tells you all of the solar eclipses and the sun and the moon calendar. And so this also all works together in a situation. Now, who brought this all around to those people? I'm telling you all about it. And people look at this weird. They're saying, oh, so you're saying that Britain people weren't British? And it's like, no, they were. There's waves of it that happened. It wasn't like there was totally different people. But they were people that had developed a much more advanced way of thinking and advanced things than those other people there. And we helped ourselves out. And eventually the snake grows big enough to bite its own tail. This is going to go to a part 3 soon. And whenever it does, it'll be in your top left-hand corner. and just click on it, and we'll see you in part 3. I'm going to continue and go on, though, here at this point. Artifacts parallel to the chaotic votive wheels, though, and this identification of the sun wheel and a chariot, right? In Norse mythology, Thor, or Tor, is a hammer-wielding god associated with thunder, lightning, and storms. Oak trees, strength, and protection of mankind, also has hallowing and healing, and then fertility, too. The cognate deity of in wider German mythology and paganism is well known in Old English as Punor and High German as Donor, and the runic shows it right there, stemming from a common Germanic punraz, meaning thunder itself. And there is an ancient belief that primordial soup was going on, and lightning strikes helped string things together and help bring forth life. And so it may not be too far off of some type of reality if you want to have the storm god creating life, but it would be a lot different than what was said. Ultimately stemming from Proto-Indo-European religions, Thor is a prominently mentioned god throughout the recorded history of the Germanic peoples, from Roman occupation of the regions of Germania to the tribal expansions of the migration period to his high popularity during the Viking ages, and when in the face of progress of their Christianization of Scandinavian area, emblems of his hammer, Mjolnir, were worn in defiance, and Norse pagan personal names containing the name of the god bear witness to his popularity. We still have that today, and Thorbjorn with the bear and things like that. It's not totally gone. They tried to strip all the paganism out of people, but it did not leave enough. In fact, it's seen in so many ways, like we're about to describe, all the way into the modern period. In fact, Thor continued to be acknowledged in rural folklore throughout Germanic regions. Thor is frequently referred to in place names. The day of the week, Thursday, is Thor's Day, and it bears his name, and names stemming from the pagan period containing his own continue to be used to this day. And I've told you about Freya and Friday and stuff, and how all of the gods that were thrown away are actually still deified in our days of the week. Yeah, and sun worship, Sunday, and that's the day that we have the worship, the biggest worship of all, shows you its connection to that straightforward. And Sunday, but of course even day, and the idea of day, and it's a day, it's not a night, even though half of it's only a day, you can still see that concept held even in just something as simple as that. About to go into Ragnarok and some other things, and we're going to stop this one right here, and we'll go on to part 3. So it'll be in your upper top left hand corner here coming up, and just go ahead and click on it, and we'll all go there and meet and continue on. I hope you join me there. Peace.